Hi, welcome to this edition of On Fire. I'm John Holland, and today we are here with Chief Franz talking about his illustrious career here at the Oshkosh Fire Department. So, Chief Franz, how long have you been working here for the Oshkosh Fire Department?
I have been here in Oshkosh for, well, at my retirement date, it'll be 33 years. I started June 9th of 1985 in Oshkosh, and actually started in the fire service in 1981 when I was a volunteer firefighter in the little town that I grew up in on the other side of the lake in Hilbert, and began going to school at Fox Valley Tech to be a firefighter, and I did an internship in Appleton Fire Department my first year in 81, 82, and I actually came here to Oshkosh in 1982 as an intern at the fire department and was here until 83 when I graduated. And I worked for, there was a private ambulance service here back then. 83, and I worked there for a year. And then I went to the Eau Claire Fire Department. That was my first career job as a firefighter before I came to Oshkosh.
Wow. So with all that time in the fire service, you had to see a lot of changes over the years. What are some of the big ones?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, some of the big changes are just the volume of calls that we've gone on over the years. You know, when I started there, we averaged probably about 7 calls for the department a day. And now we're well over 25 calls a day. So the volume of incidents that we're responding to, we're covering a little bit more territory, but that's changed a lot. The profile of our city's changed a lot. When I started, we still had a few of the woodworking factories. Morgan's was still here, and that wasn't unusual to have a call there once or twice a week, and a few big fires there every year. So the city's really changed over that time too.
So speaking of big fires, you have to have some calls that you went on that really stand out. Anything that you can think of?
Yeah, boy, you know, looking back at it, there's, you know, quite a few, you know, and one of the things just in calls in general, and that goes for all of our people here, that, you know, there's some of the smaller calls that you had or bad ones. You see a lot of tragic things over time, and that never erases from your memory. That's one of the downsides of this career, even though I really enjoyed it, but that takes a toll on you over time. But I look back, and probably one of the really big fires that I remember early on in my career was not too far from our main station here, the IGI Bowler wax factory. Burned in, that was in the early 90s. I was a driver on engine 15 at that fire. And then shortly after, about the time I made battalion chief, we had the fire at the Oshkosh Museum. That was probably one of my more memorable fires that I can think of, and I would say from an offensive, aggressive firefighting operation, that was one where we really worked hard for a long time, and the building's still standing. For a fire that lasted that long, that we were able to keep that place here for everyone. That was one of the bigger battles that I was involved with. And I remember my first day that I was in the command car here as a battalion chief. I had a fire at our other wax factory here in this city. That was in July of 1994, July 3rd, 94. Beautiful sunny day, and midday we had a major fire there. So I had quite an experience as my first day being shift commander. So those are some of the earlier, some of the big ones there. And then a few other things is right about the time, right after I made chief, we had a boxcar fire with chemicals in it, sodium hydrosulfide, that was waiting to be delivered to Hydrite Chemical Company, that burned just before Christmas. And we knew about the chemical, and, you know, with pre-planning and discussions there and dealing with that. So that was a major incident for the whole city, because we ended up evacuating a pretty large area on the south side of Oshkosh, and a lot of the industrial park, including Oshkosh Corporation. That started on a Saturday night, and that incident didn't conclude until Thursday, and we had agencies from all over the country helping us here with that one. That's probably the longest I've ever gone without sleep during that time period. I had very little sleep over those 4 or 5 days there. I think the first 48 or 72 hours I had 0. So that one really stands out, and so I got a pretty good start, or I shouldn't say a good start, quite a challenge here as the fire chief to begin with that year. Then, not to be outdone, in June the following year we had our first of 3 federally declared disasters. We had a stretch there of bad things. We had a windstorm that really devastated a lot of the areas in the city, and that incident lasted for a few days. And related to that, then we had a few floods after that we dealt with. So those were really some of the major incidents that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a bit, and I remember a few of those as well. With the hydrate, that was my first job as a public information officer, and it was, like you said, wow, what a way to get thrown into the fire there, so to speak.
Yeah, and that was a challenge for the whole city, and not just from the fire standpoint, from an emergency management standpoint, and where we really had our first opportunity to exercise our new emergency management system. And good or bad, we got very good at it the first few years here, and haven't had to use that for a while, knock on wood. You know, I'm glad that we haven't. So that's one of my other jobs here, is emergency management for the city.
With all the different things you do here and have done in your career, what is the favorite thing that you do?
One of my favorite things was training. I got to be a lieutenant and battalion chief in charge of training, and I did that through most of the 90s. And it was a time of some big change during the department, so I would say that was one of my favorite times, and some of the things that I was able to do during that period. And that relates to another favorite part of my job, which is the people here. And in 1993, we started doing our recruit academy. Prior to that, we hired people, and they just kind of got put onto a fire company and went right to work their first day. And I always remembered that from my first day on the job, and thought, boy, it would have been great to have a little bit more orientation and training before I did that, even though I had been trained as a firefighter, but just how we do things here. So we started that then. That tradition continued. Stan Toddy was the fire chief then. He had some connections with the City of Milwaukee Fire Department, sent me down to their recruit academy down there, and those folks down there taught me a few things. We brought it back here. So between training the new recruits and training our people, that was probably one of my favorite parts of the job. The other favorite part of my job, leading with the training, is working with our people here and recruiting and bringing new people into the department. That's been a great part of my job, and that's the best part of this department, is the people that work here. You know, and sometimes people ask me questions about accomplishments and things like that, and I would say the best thing that I can do, or be a part of anyway. Nothing that I do here is on my own, you know, that I don't do it. We do everything here together, but we've hired some great people over the years, and I enjoy seeing them develop and working with them and just watching the great work that they do every day. And since I've been chief, out of our 108 people, 59 of them have been hired while I was the chief here. And then the people that are in their promoted positions, all but 2 of them got promoted into the positions that they're in during that time, and I've enjoyed doing that and just working with everybody here. So those are some of the things that I enjoy, just mainly, and that's what I'll miss more than anything, is the people here.
Understandably so. We do have a great bunch of guys.
Yeah, they're awesome, and every day they're out there doing their work, and the incidents never stop, as we've been interrupted a few times while we're doing this. Is testament to that, and you know, they just do a great job, and our motto is be nice, and we've done a great job finding nice people that do this work, and that's what I hear all the time, and love getting those phone calls, and it usually begins with, you know, that they were so nice in how they treated me, you know, my family or me on this incident, and that's what it's all about.
That is exactly what it's all about. All right, so going along with the department and the guys, besides the people, you have had to see a lot change in our department in the time you've been here.
Yeah,
so
seen a lot of change, and and mostly for the good, I believe, and just right down to the trucks that have changed a lot, where we used to kind of ride on, the firefighters rode on the outside of the trucks when I started. That's a big change.
So no horses?
Yeah, well, no, I'm not that old, wasn't horses, but when I worked in Eau Claire, I actually worked on fire trucks without a roof, and where we rode on the back step of the truck and things like that. But when I got here, we had just the jump seats in the back. But riding outside, some people say, boy, that must have been cool. I said, no, it was cold in the wintertime, or you get pretty wet in the summer sometimes. But that's something that's changed. That's really kind of a minor one, but equipment has improved dramatically, from our trucks to our protective equipment and breathing apparatus, nozzles, you name it. And technology, I mean, we went from, now we had a computer in the one of the stations, and now there's a computer in every truck, so that's a big general change over time. Training's improved dramatically, what we know and how we go about doing our job. But just generally with the department, some big things that I was fortunate to be a part of here, that in the late 90s, we built 3 new fire stations. One of them, which was, we went from 5 to 6. We changed from traditional engine companies and ladder truck companies to, we combined engines and ladders into the quints, we call them, because they do 5 functions. So that was a big change, and that was a fun time also for me, or a challenge. I was doing the training then to this whole new concept on how we work. So that was a big change for the department back then. And another big change that we saw was in 2004. We were covering a few of the townships outside of the city, but in 2004 we began covering the whole southern half of Winnebago County for ambulance service, and added a 3rd ambulance and a few more people to our roster to deal with that year. So that was a big change for us, and we had a few bumps in the road, but that's as a matter of fact now, and that's been a contribution to how contributing a little bit more to how busy we are. But majority of our run growth's been in the city from that, but we've enjoyed that, and really an offshoot of that, it's improved our relationships with all the outlying fire departments as well, because we work with them directly. They first respond with us on EMS calls, so that's a change that I've seen, that our people work more closely with the surrounding township fire departments, and mutual aid and everything has improved a lot. We rely on each other more and work with each other better. So, and the most recent change that we've had, one big accomplishment we wanted to do, I talked about our recruit academy that we had, and we put that in. Now we have a similar thing for our new fire officers, a fire officer academy. We just finished that up here this week, where now all of our officers, and hopefully continuing on, will be state certified officers, and we went above and beyond the minimums on that. We started in fall and just finished that up, so I'm happy about that. One of those things, wish we would have done that sooner, but when you know better, you do better, and all the opportunities that we had didn't exist a few years ago, like the Public Safety Training Center up in Appleton, where we brought our people to do some of that, the simulations and training.
All right. With all this change, there had to be a lot of challenges, like you said. What is the most challenging part of being the fire chief?
I would have to say the most challenging part, or our most limiting part of our operation, is after my first year here, dealing with the finances of the department and the budget has been the greatest struggle and challenge that we have to deal with, and we have to get extremely creative, and probably not my favorite time of year, going through all that and the worries to make sure that we continue to be able to have the equipment and staffing that we have to meet our demand, because as I've stated, the calls for our service and demand hasn't gone down, and the budget has been extremely difficult for the 17 out of the 18 years that I've been fire chief here, and that's the tough part. And then having to explain to all the people, well, that work here, that, well, we're going to have to wait another year to replace this piece of equipment, and that's difficult, because we know how important the things that we do here are, and how much we need to make sure everything is reliable. We've gotten through and we've done that, but I would say that was my toughest challenge. To be honest with you, that's something I won't miss.
With all the time that you've put in here, just hours and hours and hours of your life, and now that it's going to be over soon, you have to have some things that you have been wanting to do that you just never had the time for. So what's next?
Well, what's next is it's going to be an adjustment. I know that because it's been a lot of weeks and I don't know. A lot of times I get home and end up just turning around and having to come back to work. So that's going to be something to get used to, but I think I'll get used to that. In the summertime, I've got a hobby I started a few years ago. I raced, they're called legend cars on dirt tracks, and I do that throughout the Midwest here, mostly in Wisconsin, but into Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota. Far south is Tennessee. You're going out to Pennsylvania this year, so that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing. I would be remiss if I didn't say that, and I know this is cliche, spending more time with my family, but that's true. One of my daughters is moving back into the area, and I've got a couple of grandchildren, a grandson, and a little granddaughter, so I do want to spend more time with them. I really look back sometimes and I feel bad about not being there for them a lot on holidays and other things, a lot of evenings, or I don't know how many times that I had to call home and tell them that I wasn't coming home today and watch the news. I don't have time to talk right now. You'll see where I am. So making up for some of that time and relaxing a little bit. I can't stop being busy. I'm probably looking to get back into, well, I do teach firefighting classes and things, and look forward to maybe applying and maybe next fall and get back into teaching a little bit more. And I also do some consulting work for other communities on fire and emergency medical services.
So before we head out for the end of this show here, is there anything you would like to add? Anything you'd like to tell us as your parting words as fire chief for the city of Oshkosh?
Yeah, this has been a great experience from the day that I started here. I've enjoyed this job. I appreciated it. I appreciate all the support I got from everybody in the community, the people that worked here. I've learned so much over the years. One of the things that's talked about in the fire service is everything, people talk about everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten. And I would say everything I needed to know about life I've learned in the firehouse kitchen, from not just, if I paid attention and listened about firefighting. And as you know, John, I know a little about the history of the city and this department, and I learned a lot of that by talking to people here, and not just in the kitchen, but that's where we congregate here. Eating is a big deal. I learned how to cook very well here from a few folks over the years, but I learned a lot here, and learned a lot about being a firefighter, learned a lot just about being a good person from all the people that worked here, and that's testament to all of the folks that worked here before me, that I work with day to day. I learned something every day here from the people that I work with, and I really appreciate that too. And said this city has been kind to me over the years and extremely supportive. It's been an honor and a privilege to do this, and I hope that our motto has shined through over all this, which is be nice. I hope folks that work with me feel that way, and I hope everybody in the city sees that our department has done that. I'll just end now with a few words that I always share with our recruit graduating classes, which I just had the privilege of doing that here a few weeks ago. We had brought our last 5 folks on board when they started. And in this, as challenging this job is, and it is, but I chose to do this in my life. And sometimes people, and I appreciate the fact that people say kind things about what we do. But was a fire chief in New York City. His name was Edward Crocker, and he had a lot of great quotes. And one of them was, and it kind of tells my story of what I wanted to do in life. And I grew up watching the emergency TV show, and I wanted to do this. My dad was a volunteer fire chief, so I saw this all the time. And one of his statements was, had no ambition but one in this life, and that was to be, in his words then, a fireman. And I know now we call ourselves firefighters, it's more generic, but that's true to me. I've had the opportunity to do what I wanted to do with my life, and that's a unbelievable thing to be able to do that. I enjoyed coming to work throughout my whole career here. I'll end with a quote from, another quote from Chief Crocker, and that is, a firefighter has one act of bravery in their career, and that's when they sign up for the job. After that, it's all in the line of duty. And as much as I've appreciated all those great comments and support and what people say about what we do, that kind of sums up what all these great people that I work with here have, that same view about their job, that what they do. And that's what we're supposed to do. When people call us, when people call 911, they have an expectation, and it's our job to fulfill that expectation. And we choose to do this, and it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do it. It has been for me. As I depart from here, I'm a happy thought that I have a few days to go here yet, but knock on wood, one of the other sayings we have here is everyone goes home. And we do everything we can to do that, and I'm glad that's happened during my career. That there's a risk involved with what we do, but we know that. We don't like to talk about it, and even as much as this is a privilege to talk about this today, it's a hard thing because of that general philosophy that I've said there. This is our job, and this is what we do, but not to downplay it too much, but on the other end, they just ask that, as hard as it is, people remember that and respect that, what firefighters do. Sometimes it looks like it's an easy one, and we do have those great times where we can be standing outside the fire station or having a meal together, but everybody doesn't see all the other things that we do every day out here to take care of people in this city. And those memories are there forever. Some of those are tough ones, and I don't even want to talk about them, what I've seen over the years, but they're there. And but as I said, we chose to do this. But I ask everybody to just remember that, and we're not asking for any kind of accolades or the hero word or any of that kind of stuff that makes all of us uncomfortable, but just ask that people treat and respect firefighters and police officers for what they do over time. I do. It's been great, and thank you. Thanks, Oshkosh. It's been a great career.
You've been a great fireman and a great firefighter, and I'm very proud to have worked with you and known you, and the city has been very lucky to have you. So thank you.
Thanks, John.
We'd like to thank Chief Franz for joining us today and for all his dedicated years of service, and also like to thank you for watching us here on Fire, and we'll see you next time.